Shirley here with Jupiter, point of Dallas, and this is Mercury, our Mercury day, and the Mercury is conjunct in Chiron, 25 degrees Aries, and this is in conjunction with Aries as well, Aries in Aries. Ascendant is an erratic degree Leo with the Sun in Taurus, and the midheaven ruled by Mercury as well, just separating from Sedna. So, a little bit of um, mm, let's allow this one to be a bit messy, okay? So many thoughts and so many things coming up. One of the things is Aries. Wherever we have Aries, Aries is the I am, and it's the doing you. Now, wherever we have Aries, that is going to affect us. So if it is your first house, this is natural, okay? It is you, right? But if it is in another house, it means that you equate the I am with the matters of that house. So one great example, as we had the Mercury return for Adolf Hitler chart, is that Adolf Hitler had Aries basically in the 7th house, with Mercury there at about this degree. Mercury was ruling for him basically the 9th house, that is Gemini, so he would equate himself with his beliefs, his religion, and yes, and perhaps his rank, okay, if it is for order or institution or something like that. And it was ruling his 12th house of Virgo, which for that case would be um, jails, hospitals, mental health. Now this is very interesting because for Adolf Hitler, he needed a partner, and not just a partner. Aries is an argumentative partner. He needed a conflict basically to assess his mental health according to, and his worldview according to. So this is a very conflictual and perhaps even perpetually conflictual with Mars in the 8th house that he would have in Taurus, and he would identify with this conflict. There's always a conflict that he had to go through. Now, I said it's going to be messy and surprising. So that would be the teachings. And also for him, the I am was associated with something as constant conflictual change or perpetual war, which was pretty much the case in not just in his teachings but in his experiential life. Okay, he wanted to study this or to paint this or to do that, and he didn't get funding, which is 8th house. And so he said, okay, let's do architecture. They didn't get funding for that. He said, but his father was officer. He said, I could not be officer. Then he went to jail, and then he went to those experiences that were the conflictual experiences shaped the I am. And then throughout that, he writes a book that manifests this experience. That he talks about basically sharing the experience of living in perpetual war and seeing the world in that respect. Now, the funny thing is that Mars was in Taurus, which originally he took to being a painter with oil and watercolors. I think, yes, he was using oil and watercolors of the serene nature of the motherland. It's a very classic So it's kind of like if the initial instinct, bless you, was absolutely correct. And because he did not receive money for that, which had to do with the lineage and the banking system, and then he would try to resolve a step, but it's something that now everybody would say, oh God, if only there was a art therapy for people like, Adolf Hitler, we wouldn't have a. I was like, well, you need to fund that. Because for Adolf Hitler, how he managed his mental health and the transformations in life, but how he managed his mental health and how he expressed his worldview and who he partners up with had to do with the I am. But those partnerships brought into cycle of transformation that was conflictual in terms of the funding. So you see how that I am, and also when you think about the partnering with Aries is conflictual. But Aries is not afraid of conflict, and also not afraid. How should I say it? Not only are they not afraid of other opinions, but also they are appreciative of various perspectives, of various worldviews. And so this situated in a basically artistic debate, which was breeding something that now everybody loves to hate, but keeps perpetuating the same thing, and it still goes to the funding of leisure. If I go to the toughest, where is the Epstein ring developing from? Now, Epstein is very famous that everybody knows. We have the true and so on. With Israel now, they are trying to find somebody, in Hebrew they say Seir Lazazel, for somebody to kill their 300 children testified. And everybody tried to silence that and so on. And then we fight with the Houthis. What is the Houthis? The children of Yemen. It was classified for 50, 70 years. And so now they're back. They bombed an airport there. They bombed the airport here. And I'm like, oh, well, I can't afford a flight, so. But yes, so back to the topic is when we talk about like the pedorings and the child trade and the preparing of like child assassins and so on and so forth, it is funded somehow and is serving banking. Like there's no way around that. Because this is the extortion to which you can trade the economy of ideas and social struggles as well, and still have the money running. Because this trauma that to get to the core, they basically do it as infants. They erase for the identity of a people, and then the program identities into them. So it's very difficult to get to the core because they basically want to create a situation where there is no core. And you think about how what the ideas that contributed to the reality of concentration camps and all mass big disaster, whether Americans working with or not with, I don't know. Now they have concentration camps in their own land. So whether if they do it with or without Germany, I guess they do it, and that creates a situation where it all comes down to, well, who requests all those filmed rituals in children, and to what purpose? And since those things govern currency and govern economy, the economy of ideas try to perpetuate that, holding on to those rituals. However, it is by tending to the thread of how that idea generates that reality that we begin to have a change. Because in Hitler's time, there was discussion of hardworking people. Well, if you don't have good combination of rest and work, you can succumb to that easily, and it's become like slavery. And so if you believe, oh, you cannot make money with art and so on, and art is not free, yes, free, or something like that, you don't allocate time for people to have leisure, then what happens? But what would the artist do? Because if you think, what would be good therapy for the dictator? Well, to paint, to sing, to laugh, to dance, to be appreciated, to shine, you know? And instinctually, this is wherever these people, you think about Adolf Hitler, instinctually, he was a young boy learning history and painted the scenery of the motherland. What was the scenery? The early paintings, as those houses that you see, that he saw at the time where he was. So either it's the serene house on the riverbank and so on, and then it's like, okay, architecture, so they want the city, so he painted the old structures of the city with the trees and everything that was basically connecting him with the roots. And it's okay to get grounded, because to express your emotions, you need to have connection to the ground, so you can contain your emotions and then you can feel. So the instinct was good instinct. It's because he was unrooted, like many of the populations that he will later unroot, that basically we got to all this trouble, and the core of the issue was the same issue with the banking. Now, it's very easy to fall into equating banking with race or religion. But actually, if we talk about banking, then we talk about IRO is Bank of Vatican. You can hang the Pope tomorrow. I mean, the previous one just died, but you hang the Pope tomorrow for war crimes, but the banking, you cannot do anything. They are immune. And so, have we really changed? Have we really progressed from what created, but basically what we don't want to see again, right? And if we go back to the root, we go back to the chart of the leader most associated. The leader was the presenter, the performer, the a person who sparked up the spirits of the people around. we go back to the chart and we see therein lies the problem, and the problem has not changed. We can be swayed by naming the problem one religion or another, or we can go into the deeper layer of structure and conception. And all things Taurus, and think about, hey, if the world had ascendant Libra and had Taurus as the 8th house, what would be the things and the challenges and transformation? What would we need to keep in order for it not to generate Hitlers upon Hitlers? And by the way, Israel has ascendant Libra, but next to Spica, where is fair trade. And you see what Israel did good is very difficult to take from her. Very difficult to take from Israel. What Israel did good, very difficult to take. What Israel did not good, okay, for 70 years, who are we fighting with? The Houthis. Had we not allowed trading of the children of Yemen to the Americans, by the way, some of them, then that was the declassified document, okay? I can only say for what was declassified. Then basically, okay, would be different trajectory. And how do you trade the children? Well, you ship them or you fly them. So those things, yes, they tend to pop up, they tend to come around. But we are also living at the times where what we think of karma is shifting. And so, why does it happen? Because it brings back to the biblical story, and the biblical story is one study case of many stories. And but this study case is those times where Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius, where it's not the order of karma that was before. It's a shifting in how we see Saturn, and it's basically shifting karmas in a way that is untraditional. And what do we have in the biblical stories? And I speak to a completely secular person. Okay, I just studied Bible like other people in secular settings. So what do we have in the Bible? It's very simple. There was the saying that the fathers ate unripe fruit and the teeth of the children were rotting. But then there will change of that, and even if the fathers ate unripe fruit, the children of the teeth no longer rotting. What is the difference? What is unripe fruit? Well, it's the same thing as we have a leader, it's my other fatherland, and talked about Muhammad waiting for 6 years old Aisha to turn 9. It's the same thing, is that is the unripe fruit. For when we do those things to children, and it's the banks that do that. It doesn't matter if those banks are for IRO, for Khazarian, whatever, for whatever name you throw it, or your indigenous local society. For the same structure. When that is practiced in the children, then we have a threshold for where Pluto reaches Aquarius, and then there's a change. And what is changing is that the children will decide not to perpetuate the same things. They want to change in the way that wealth is constructed. And lo and behold, we had a shifting of the wealth from Pluto to Neptune. Pluto left the Capricorn, and there was some bank collapsing in the beginning, but the ingress to Aquarius was not the banks collapsing anymore. However, then Neptune changed into Aries, and we had the raising of the tariffs. So we shifted the wealth from Pluto to Neptune, which makes us, because as we are in the coming decades, Neptune will separate from the century-long sextile to Pluto. Which means Pluto is kind of like passing the torch on to Neptune. And then Neptune takes the wealth and transitions it through the zodiac in a conflictual way with Pluto. Which we don't know how to predict. There are a lot of things that work together right now. Psychology and psychiatry, espionage, or you think about the first Gladio operation, and now we are in another beginning of Cold War, and how the drug lords have worked together with the banking and work together with the psyops and work together with this, work together with that, and that was possible. And to some degree, we began to criticize human experiments as Uranus went to the back and forth, but Pluto and Neptune stayed aligned. And when they begin to separate, when they begin to disagree, many of the things that we have so been accepting, and many things that were normalized will no longer go. What things? I don't know. Bless you. But then if you think about it, oh, the problem of those children in the Rabobank or in Epstein, what can I do about this? Well, those children are traded by banks. So they want to create certain things that create certain economy of certain ideas. And now it's have to link through what ideas, how does the idea thread to the reality of the children that are going to these death camps? And from the periphery, from the idea. And Hitler is such a fantastic example because Hitler was a painter, a good technical painter. He just wasn't with the spirit of the time. And so all the ideas that were running for the concentration camps, they were great ideas. Work hard, family value. It's a great idea to have a nice family, to care for your family, to be a hardworking person. But what about, and even in the art, okay, what is done to the concentration camp is that in the doorway there would be a culture, there would be the artist, there would be the musicians, there would be all these people. This was the best that Hitler could get funding for. But if we as society accept for all these nice ideas without holding the thread of how this nice idea connects to the situation of those children in the death camps. And it is true that this linking that we can create leverage upon leverage upon leverage upon leverage for something else, okay, to evolve. A lot of people that are in these death cults, they're afraid to say, oh my God, if there is God, I must pay for all of the things that I did, because they have this conception of God that is actually generated by the same banks that perpetuate abuse. So any word was made to be triggering. If you take a look at who, and I'm putting the fire on Epstein, but it's like this is a case you all know, okay? But modernly that could be Tate. And so with Epstein, okay, who were the people in that circle? First and foremost, they were the children. First and foremost, they were the children. They were the children that did not get out of that camp. And they were the best of our thinkers, the best of our gurus, the best of our economists, the best of our pioneers, the best of our leaders, the best of our musicians, the best of the best. For those that weren't the best of the best on both a performative level, a warrior level, and espionage level, they did not make it. But only if they were the best also in killing. And the killing and betraying their best, the people that they love the most. And this happens all in between wars. And all the while, the children at school are taught, okay, for the social engineerings. Now, some things we don't think are connected. A person says, well, everybody has to work. What is how you make money? Okay, they don't even think about the option that yes, there is work and there is rest, and rest is as important to work as work is to rest. And there is leisure, and they think of how will I make a money being a painter? How would I make a money? Well, you have to ask yourself, who are the people that are making money in society? Oh, but the people always pay for the things that people will always need. Will always need food. Yeah, people begin to grow food forests. Would always need water. Yeah, people begin to grow food forests. They grow the water. Yeah, people will always need a housing. Then people go to live in a tent. And then it's like, oh, but there is crime. Okay, where is the crime stemming from? Because it seems like you pay protection, you pay protection, you pay protection, you pay protection. And that was still, in Israel, there was a lady that got this bottle with the gasoline, okay? And the bottle with the gasoline on the business, it means she has to find the protection and she has to pay protection. She has to find him. They just leave the bottle. And she got sick of it, so she took that bottle and began to do demonstration. And many people joined her. And I said, well, enough with that protection. Now, of course, with the people that charge protection, it's not like, they're bad people. No, there's something going on there, but we begin to unravel those chains of things that were invisible and to transform and transmute. Because if you go to the boss of bosses of mafia, Carlo Gambino, the moon in either Baharani or Ashvini Nakshatra and a Ketu in Ashvini Nakshatra. Ashvini is the healer of healers. So basically this person was sent from through the mafia to curate the systems, and he created systems for which mafia bosses and mafias can settle disputes in, and basically was basis and foundation for commission and for justice system. And so since he had the Ketu next to Ashvini, his Rahu was closer to Spika, which actually is, the fairness. And it was through the passage of what's considered crime or criminal that he ushered into for what is actually fair and just. So I said this episode was going to be a bit messy, and as we are approaching Ketu is left Al-Qaid, but the moon approaching Ketu, he's still in the Big Bear, Uranus and Algol, Taliban making it more difficult for women to be women, and there's a crossing of the threshold, but with it, the crossing of the threshold means that there are more and more people that find more and more points of interferences and tend to things that we didn't believe we can tend to before. So again, it's the time that just tending to the topic already changes the trajectory of what we think is karma, and we don't have to be afraid of what is to be, but more to tend to tend to that. And there's another idea and another idea and another idea, and thus we reach the threshold where even though our forefathers ate ripe fruit, whether we are coming from indigenous person in Greenland, or a person in Uganda, or person in Kenya, or a person in US, or a person in Texas. I mean, they're getting different, I guess. Or a person in Gaza, or a person in Israel, or a person in Europe, we all know, or a person in China, or a person in Japan, okay? Our forefathers, they all raped children. They all ate the unripe fruit. But there was also these things where, if you eat the ripe fruit, you fall from Eden. Why would you fall from Eden if you eat the ripe fruit? That's something to think about. But what is the ripe fruit? Someone who is ready and willing. And that was condemned. So in the spirit of yes, and when you understand that, you understand how come people like Tate, that was supposed to be like the next Epstein, but say sex with women is gay. Because that's the ripe fruit. And so, but to break through to the damned if you do, damned if you don't, but you stopped eating from the unripe fruit, you understand that it's not what the big fear that you thought was going to be is actually not necessarily for all that scary.